All throughout history, humans have come up with crafty little ways to slime out their adversaries. Drones, gay, nukes, bi-curious, car bombs, incredibly based. No bias here, but for every innovative idea that was thought up, followed several stupid ideas. And today, I wish to dive into the most silly strategies and tactics used by humans to gain the upper hand in warfare that actually worked. Hey, I think I saw this video before. No, you did not. Silly strategy stories is a completely unique concept taught up by myself and my professional writers. Hey Guac, can you write me a script please? And let's start off with my first story. And first, let's take a little trip to India. Probably sons I'll never say again. Anyway, it is 1398 and Timur, or Tamerlane, is on a cheeky conquest of India with around 90,000 men. He eventually reaches the city of Delhi to find a large army with a vanguard of 100 war elephants in front of them, led by Sultan Mahmud II. Timur's horses were so frightened, having never seen such animals before, that they refused to charge. Why, can you just fucking charge? Nay! Nay, fuck you. So Timur would have to get a bit crafty, and he thought to himself, mate, what's the counter to elephants? Camels. On fire. So Timur rounded up a few hundred of his baggage camels and stacked hay onto their backs, and when the elephants began to charge at their position, his men lit the hay on fire, and the camels, not taking liking to this, began rushing towards the elephants, and the elephants started to get a little startled as a bunch of fucking shrieking, yelling camels on fire began charging towards them. So the elephants turned their backs and began rushing into their own men, trampling and killing many. Timur, using this to his advantage, then charged with the rest of his army and quickly defeated the Sultan's army. And after a glorious victory, he then entered the city, killed up to 100,000 people, and enslaved the rest of the population. Nice, man, nice. Here's a quote from the historian Abdul Qadir Badauni, or some shit, about the aftermath of this brutal sacking. Such a famine and pestilence fell upon Delhi that the city was utterly ruined, and those of its inhabitants who were left died, while for a whole 2 months, not a bird moved a wing in Delhi. Oh yeah! Now for my next story, let's continue on the topic of flaming animals. It is the year 1215, and we are in England during the First Barons' War, and several rebels had captured and were holed up in Rochester Castle, a very formidable stronghold. And the King of England, King John, was fucking furious and marched with his army to lay siege. And for the next 2 months, his men will launch projectiles from catapults, attempting to cause a breach in the walls. However, the walls proved too strong, and while King John was quite a retard, he was also, however, quite crafty, and had his miners begin digging underneath the fortress with the intention of eventually collapsing the keep. He then ordered his administrator to quote, "With all haste, by day and night, you send us 40 of the fattest pigs, of the sort least good for eating, to bring fire under the tower." And after receiving 40 pig carcasses, he then had his men stuff the tunnel with the pigs. Hey yo, it's cuz, where you pigging me? Ah, fuck, this one's still alive. The men then began smearing the pigs and their lard all over the walls, which is extremely flammable. Afterwards, they would then set the carcasses on fire, and the lard would catch fire immediately and begin burning through the wooden beams, holding up the southeast corner of the keep, collapsing it entirely. And with a large portion of the castle just fucking collapsed, the rebels retreated into a smaller section of the castle. However, they no longer had access to the food that was held in that section, and began to starve quickly. And after eating their horses, they chose to surrender to King John. And luckily for them, King John is remembered today as the most honourable king of England, and in revenge, he wanted to hang all the rebel barons. However, his advisors warned him that if he did such a thing, no knight would ever wish to fight on his side again. So he honourably imprisoned the barons, hanged the crossbowmen, and chopped off a few hands and feet of a few common soldiers, because fuck them, they aren't nobility. Oh yeah! Jono would die of dysentery a year later, leaving the throne to his son, Henry of Winchester, who would become Henry III, at just 9 years old. And sadly, Henry himself was quite a shit king. His incompetence would later spark the Second Barons' War, like father like son. And for my next story, let's talk about the time when a bunch of barbarian cliff dwellers drugged and slaughtered a bunch of Roman legionaries. And first, a bit of context. Pompey Magnus, also known as Pompey the Great, is campaigning against the king of Pontus, Mithridates VI, and absolutely fucked the king at the Battle of Lycus, sending him retreating to the Caucasus Mountains. And Pompey, not wishing for him to get away, began pursuing the king, until they came across a few villages inhabited by the Heptacomate people, or whatever the fuck, which translates into the people of the 7 villages. Creative. Anyway, Pompey didn't really consider these tribesmen too big of a threat, and was kinda convinced they were just retarded barbarians. But in fact, they were fierce supporters of the King of Pontus, and would set up, in my opinion, a very stupid but crafty trap. The tribe harvested honeycomb produced from the local rhododendron flowers, or whatever the fuck, which contained cyanotoxin. This honey today is known as hallucinogenic honey, or mad honey. People forget, man, they invented mad honey in 66 BC. Sorry. Anyway, after gathering a bunch of this honey, they then put it in bowls and just left it on the fucking side of the road. And for some reason, as the Roman legionaries were marching through, they were like, "Doi, doi, doi, piece of candy," and just began gobbling up the fucking honey. And it wasn't long before they just started tripping balls. Some legionaries started to act as if they were violently drunk, while others just became fucking paralyzed. And now with the Romans drugged, the tribesmen snuck out from the caves, or whatever the fuck, and began slaughtering the incapacitated Romans, with possibly 1,000 soldiers being killed by the end of the day. While this was quite an embarrassing defeat, this didn't stop Pompey, as he eventually defeated Mithridates, made Pontus a client state, and then brought the 30 tribesmen under the yoke of the Roman Republic. Oh yeah! And for my next story, we only have to travel a few miles to China. Talk about the time when Chinese general Zhuge Liang, also known as Kung Ming, rage-baited Marquis Sun Quan into forming an alliance with him to defeat Cao Cao's army of 200,000 to 500,000 people. I guess Chinese people are just bad at math. Anyway, it is 208 AD, and we are in China during the Three Kingdoms period, and General Cao Cao has been absolutely fucking shit up, defeating his enemies and conquering much lands, leaving two main adversaries for him to deal with, Liu Bei and Sun Quan. Cao Cao will raise a massive army of around 200,000 men. However, he claims that he actually had 800,000 men, so who fucking knows. Anyway, he was planning on conquering the rest of China in one massive campaign. Sun Quan was quite scared, being quite young and inexperienced, and had much to prove for himself. Yet when he received a message from Cao Cao demanding his surrender, he was very well considering it. However, Liu Bei, who already suffered brutal defeats against Cao Cao, wasn't willing to give up just yet, having around 20,000 men still ready to fight. But as Cao Cao was sailing down with his massive army, he was in desperate need of not only men, but ships too, so he would turn to the naval superpower at the time, the state of Wu, led by Sun Quan, and ask him for help. However, the two sides kinda fucking hated each other, so Liu Bei would send his crafty advisor, Kung Ming, over to negotiate. Kung Ming met up with Sun Quan's advisor, named Lu Su, and Lu Su really wanted to fight back against Cao Cao, but knew his lord was scared and timid, so he told Kung Ming not to mention the number of Cao Cao's army. But the crafty crafter had other plans in mind, rage-baiting. Instead of talking about how strong Sun Quan and his navy were, he spent the entire meeting calling Sun Quan a bitch for even considering surrender, and also heavily over-exaggerated the strength of Cao Cao's army to make his own Lord Liu Bei look braver and honorable. Hey, Kung Ming, just don't scare me, lord. He's just a little boy after all. I got you, fam. So, Kung Ming, I hear you want to fight Cao Cao, but to do so, you need my ships and my men. Tell me why I help you, how many men you have, and how many Cao Cao. Hey, lad, hey, don't you say a fucking thing. Here's the fucking thing, Chinaman. You're just too big of a bitch to do the fucking man dance. That dog called Cao sails this way with 2 million soldiers. He's got fucking rockets, kamikaze drones, and even goy beams attached to his ships. Oh, really? Yes, and my lord Liu Bei, with only 20,000 men, is willing to fight to the death. He is a man of unparalleled genius and honor. If he fails, it's because it's heaven's will. He'd never bow to a dog like Cao. Fuck me, that was a bar. But you're just a fucking pussy, Sun Quan. Maybe you should surrender. Sun Quan in anger drew his sword, cut a table in half, nice, and said something along the lines of, "Fuck you, motherfucker. I no surrender. I fight. If Cao Cao come here, I fucking cut him. Rack of this table." Sun Quan fired up, then sent his most trusted general, Zhou Yi, with 30,000 men and around 200 ships, to meet up with Liu Bei at the Yangtze River to intercept Cao Cao and his army. However, they were still outnumbered, minimum 4 to 1, and could easily be fucked. Luckily for them, Zhou Yi was quite the crafty vet himself, and knowing Cao Cao lacked competent naval commanders, because he fucking executed them, story for another time, he asked his general, Huang Gai, to pretend to defect to Cao Cao, and Huang Gai would begin writing messages to him, and the ambitious warlord was all too eager to accept him into his ranks. And just before the battle, Huang Gai would sail over with around 20 ships, with the intention of setting them on fire right before they met Cao Cao's to burn down his fleet. Oh, look, he coming now. Very good. Man, what the fat cunt? Oh laddie, what happened to your tattoo attire impression?
Gonna be bad, my nigga.
One guy's ships crashed head-on into Cao Cao's, and old Tao made one fatal mistake. Given the fact that many of his men were seasick from the voyage, he chained the ships together for stability, which ensured total fuckery for his fleet. Meanwhile, Zhou Yu and Liu Bei were launching an attack from the other side and began cutting down Cao Cao's men. With Cao Cao retreating and the alliance on the pursuit, his army was basically destroyed, losing around 100,000 to 150,000 men, whereas the alliance lost only 10,000. Nice. After this defeat, Cao Cao would retreat back up north and was never able to pursue such an ambitious campaign on the south ever again. Very fucking crafty, but as someone who's a fan of Cao Cao and glazes the fuck out of him, fuck these cunts. Now, for the next story, we only have to fast forward a few years to the American Civil War. Confederate General Joe Johnston was sitting with an army of around 40,000 men near Centreville, and only a few miles yonder sat the renowned retard of the Union, General George McClellan, with around 120,000 men, and McClellan, believing he was outnumbered because he's a retard, decided that he's not going to attack Johnston, but instead embark on his peninsular campaign to head to Richmond via sea. So he began his preparations for the campaign. We're on the float, yeah. Johnston, not wishing to be cut off from Richmond or outflanked, decided that it was time to retreat. However, he was quite worried that during the retreat, McClellan might launch an attack on his rear guard, so he decided a crafty little trick to make the Union believe that he was in fact still there. And to do this, he would use Quaker guns. What's a Quaker gun? Well, it's a fucking log, painted black, that looks like it's supposed to go be a man's gooch, but from far away, it resembled artillery pieces. He would then place these glorified logs on carriages to make them look all the realer, and afterwards began to retreat with his 40,000 men. And old McClellan was none the wiser. Nah, and those are cannons. Unsure if the army was still there, he first sent scouts, who reported it to be eerily quiet, and afterwards he would send a few infantry units to go up ahead, and when they arrived, they saw that the camp was basically empty, besides the left behind Quaker guns. Hey Sean, this looks like something I stick up your mask, cunt. Me mask fucking dead. Fuck you suck, Sean. And for my final story, let's continue with our topic of deception. And for this story, we are focusing on Condottieri, or whatever the fuck, Sir John Hawkwood. Hawkwood, being known for having an extremely cool fucking name, is also known for being perhaps the greatest mercenary commander in history. And first, a bit of context. Hawkwood and his men were employed by the Republic of Pisa to fight against the Republic of Florence, and in 1368, he was absolutely fucking the Florentine countryside, raiding, burning, and pillaging everything in sight. You know, all that fun stuff. The Florentines, not taking liking to this, were like, hey, fuck you, and raised an army that heavily outnumbered Hawkwood to begin pursuing him. Hawkwood knew if he fought them in a classic pitch battle, he would be defeated, so he reached into his bag of tricks, like Miguel Piodion, and began recruiting a bunch of the town's local children. But don't worry, these children were only meant to make his army look larger. He wasn't going to use them to fight. That would be immoral. These children were given spears, helmets, shields, and banners, and were placed on a ridge in full view of the enemy army. They would then wave their flags and tilt their spears so that the sun's light would reflect off the tips, ensuring that the enemy saw them. And the Florentines, seeing that his army was larger than expected, fucking shredded their jugs and retreated, allowing Hawkwood to escape with his army unmolested. Oh yeah! Now it's important for me to mention, there's a chance that this didn't even fucking happen. While Hawkwood was known to use young boys like squires and pages to make his army look bigger, this story of him recruiting village children didn't come around till the 1700s. But it's a fucking fun story, and I like to choose to believe it's real. Why? Because I like Hawkwood. The guy was pretty cool, and also a cunt, like me. And that sadly ends my video of the most silly strategy and tactics used in history. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, because I upload once a week to give you your weekly dose of retarded history. And if you want a part 2, or want a video all about the first rage bait in history, or also want me to kill myself, leave a comment below. Anyway, launcher.